Welcome, I'm the Deadwood Jedi. This is another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today we are going to be looking at Hydra. Now it's Season 2 right now, where we've got the head of Wrath, the head of Torment, the head of Mischief, and the head of Suffering, right? We've got poisons from Suffering and that whole deal. We've got Wrath, who just hits super hard, Mischief stealing our buffs, and Torment is fearing the heck out of us. So I want to go over the three teams that I'm using. Now I'm not going to do all three in one video. That's just insane. So we're going to look at I'm going to have three different videos, each one looking at each of the teams that I'm using. Now, you know, as I go through, I only have so many champions, so each one's going to be a little bit different, and I'm definitely using different styles for each team. And I've really struggled with this one. This was hard. The first week was a real struggle. I didn't even get the top chest. Right now, my clan, the clan I'm in, is working on Brutal. That's the one we're trying to take down each week. We weren't successful in the first week as we were still trying to figure out all the mechanics and stuff. But my guess is this next week we will be able to finally take it down as we've, you know, come together and kind of come up with some different strategies. And you've seen a lot of these on YouTube. So I just want to share my approach to how I'm going about doing this. Now I have three very distinct teams. Well, I have two very distinct teams. I'm still working on the third one, but by the time I'll get that video out later this week so you guys can see it. But the primary team that I'm using right now is this one over my shoulder. This is a max HP reduction type of team, and we're taking a lot of things that, you know, I've found to be really successful so far in implementing them. One of the things we're doing is making sure we have a high resistance Mischief head steel target, right? And that's going to be Chris. He's got really high resistance. Same thing with my Rector Draft. Both of them have very high resistance, and so even if the buffs accumulate on them, they're not going to get stolen by the head of Mischief. This allows us to protect the rest of our team. The other thing that we really want to implement is block buffs. It is a super important and valuable debuff to bring in your team. The reason why is the head of the poison head, the head of Suffering, right? He's going to continuously put a poison, like the poison cloud on all the other heads, which means you can't crit unless they have HP burn. Well, this current group doesn't have HP burn, so I need to make sure that I keep block buffs up for the entire fight. That's really important. To do that, I'm going to be bringing in Hugo. Hugo's right over my shoulder right there. She's an amazing champion for this rotation, actually for all the rotations, honestly. In addition to that, block buffs is really good for the head of Wrath because the head of Wrath puts a lot of buffs on themselves. They put the reflect damage, they put increase attack, they put block debuffs. So a lot of things that we want to make sure don't actually land on that head. That's what Hugo's there for, as well as a decreased defense on an AoE. Now I do have Krisk in this team, and Krisk, as we all know, is probably the strongest champion for Hydra, period. Not only does Krisk have really great base stats, so it's easy to build Krisk, well, not easy, but easier to build Krisk up with both accuracy and resistance. He also puts up a lot of buffs on your allies and himself, which makes him an ideal target for the head of Mischiefs. In addition to that, he extends all those buffs, and when he gets attacked, he puts up debuffs on the enemy head. So that means I don't technically have to bring in a decreased defense or a decreased attack champion, because Chris kind of does that by himself. And that's sort of the situation going on right here. I don't have any decreased attack champions in my team. I'm relying on Krisk to keep my team alive in this. But I do have Hugo to bring us decreased defense, which is going to be helpful because we're going to be using max HP champions. I'm going to be using the two ones that are most famous right now, Husk and Royal Guard. Husk and Royal Guard, an amazing combination. They have different affinities, so they're strong against different affinities, which is going to work really well. Royal Guard is actually my preferred one because he brings some really nice debuffs on top of that. Decreased defense on his A1 and a decreased speed, which is an AoE thing, which is really helpful. But he's blue affinity. There's two red affinity heads in this, and there's a third one in the vault coming up afterwards. So it's really important that he's not going to be able to do great damage on those three heads. So having Husk is really helpful because he's going to be at least neutral affinity for those three, and he's actually strong affinity for the other two blue heads, one that's in the comp and one that can pop up. So Husk is preferred for this current rotation, but I like having the nice little combination there. On top of that, I'm bringing in a champion that I have to say I don't necessarily recommend everybody do. You really have to build a specific team to make this one work. But I've been trying to push the envelope for where I can with my account on, you know, champions we can use in styles and approaches. And so I'm bringing in Demytha. And Demytha is actually phenomenal for this. Phenomenal if you have block buffs up, if you have a way to steal those buffs back if they do land, or at least a target for the Mischief head. This is all really, really important because Demytha brings a a block damage buff, and block damage is amazing for Hydra unless it gets stolen, in which case it is awful for Hydra because then those heads have block damage as well. But I find Demytha to be really good. Actually comes in handy a lot when Head of Wrath lands his big hits. He protects our entire team, which is great. And when we have champions like Royal Guard, who's a little bit squishier, I don't want to have to rely on Rector Draft to revive him. In this case, it's really nice having Demytha there. Now, my first rotation, this is one of those teams that I stopped paying attention to for a second. All of a sudden, they were wiped out. So I'm really excited and encouraged to see what kind of damage we can do with this. Honestly, I don't know yet. But my guess is this is going to be like with my build, my account, probably a 15 to 20 million damage team. So let's do the run, and then at the end, I'll show you the champions so you can see the stats that I'm bringing them with. As far as the skills go, I haven't turned anything off. All the skills are on and ready to go. So we're just going to go ahead and run this and see where we end up. So I'm still trying to figure out exactly how best to showcase Hydra videos. It's something a little bit different from Clan Boss. So we're going to be, as you can see, it's sped up right now. We're going to be slowing it down at parts, speeding it up at others, and skipping ahead partway through. This way I can kind of highlight some of the key points that I think happen along the way, show you a majority of the run, but then you don't have to sit there for the full 30 plus minutes that it takes to do this kind of run. Definitely I'll show you the end so you can kind of see the damage result and how we finish up. I want to show you why one of the things about Demytha that makes her so great for this is this right here. She's going to put that block damage up. Now check this out. Head of Wrath explodes. Everybody has block damage on. No one takes any damage. Just a really nice implementation. There's going to be rotations where the Head of Mischief isn't in there, where we're going to be able to bring in block damage champions, and I think to really good success for our teams. This obviously isn't one of them, and I think you could, as long as you have the right target for that Head of Mischief. I think that's really key, because if block damage goes on the other heads, obviously that's a devastating blow for our run. So there's definitely some potential there. Still kind of working out the kinks of how best to do that, but you can see there is some potential. Right here, we get ourselves into a bit of trouble when the Head of Mischief swallows up Husk. That's definitely problematic. The Head of Mischief is strong affinity against Royal Guard, so Royal Guard is going to weak hit a lot. So because we only really have two major damage dealers, we have Husk and we have Royal Guard. When either of them gets swallowed, it can be really problematic. Thankfully, we're able to get through this. We have block buffs, so we don't have to worry about the poison cloud. We have decreased defense, so we're doing some significant damage, and we do get a decent hit eventually from Royal Guard here. But this is definitely something to look out for, and if I was really trying to optimize this fully, I'd make sure that the speeds were a little bit tuned differently so Husk wasn't the one getting swallowed, or wasn't getting swallowed at that point. The other thing here, you do see we do have that poison cloud is on that Head of Mischief, and that makes it really hard to do any damage. Thankfully, it falls off in time for us to get a big hit from Royal Guard and to free Husk, but definitely problematic. So this is another point that becomes an issue. We just got a new head popped up. It's gonna be that Head of Decay, and Head of Decay, man, that one really messes things up by being able to remove all the buffs, all the debuffs that we're placing out there, and heal people and place that shield out there. It can really, it really shortchanges your run, unfortunately. So if I was really trying to maximize this fully, I could have, refreshed and try to make sure that I get a different head that pops up again. But I'm already a few hours into running this, and I just got tired. I knew I was doing decent damage at 10 million at this point in the fight. I knew we'd probably get pretty good result after this. I think at least 15, but maybe even more. So I figured this was good enough. I have 3 keys, so I figured I can continue to work with the one that I have here. And we're able to still highlight everything that I wanted to highlight for you guys. So this is the part of the fight where we begin to die. You can see the Head of Decay is out there, and so he puts up that shield on people. He's gonna cleanse the debuffs. And that's a real problem when you're trying to keep block buffs up for the full fight. And you can see there's even a poison cloud on that head of Mischief that just ate Hugo. And so at this point, we're pretty much done, because we're not going to be able to rescue Hugo in time before he gets digested. The digestion turns are going down very rapidly. And so it's just really a matter of time before we, succumb to this. But because of the champions we have, we can still last a pretty darn long time and still do pretty good here. But it is really just a matter of time at this point, now that we lost Hugo. But I'll let you watch the end of this run and see what result we get. There we go, 19.32 million. Not a bad result, I'd say. Maybe not the greatest, but I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, this is a hard rotation and there's only one key. So it's not one key damage, which I know a lot of people are showing off, but we're doing a couple things that go counter to what's best for this stage, right? One of them, we're not bringing an HP burn. So you notice when Hugo died, it was pretty close to being over at that point, because once we weren't blocking the buffs, it's really hard to win when the poisons are going out there. Also, that wrong head kind of came up, that head of suffering, I want to say it is, or head of wrath. No, not head of wrath, the head of decay. Head of decay came up, which heals and removes buffs, and boy, that changes the dynamics drastically. I think that might be the most difficult head to deal with, not individually, but it makes the whole process a lot harder. So once we lost Hugo, things went really bad. On top of that, we brought in Demytha. We brought in block damage, which meant I had to do, and this is not my only run on this, but it meant I had to do a couple runs, because if ever that got stolen, I knew we were in trouble. We don't have anybody stripping buffs from the enemy. So there's a lot of things in here that didn't go great for us. And, had we brought in different champions, maybe it would have gone a little bit better. But remember, we're not just building one team, we're building 3 teams. And I think that's something to remember, not only when you're watching other content creators put out their compositions, which is great, right? When you see a 1 key team, that's awesome. That means that is all you need if you can get to 1 key with that. And it's a great idea and guide of like, hey, this is a way to build these teams. But, for a lot of us, I can't 1 key with any of my teams. I don't care what gear I'm putting on, what champions I'm bringing in. So for someone like me, probably for someone like you, you're going to need to have kind of that idea of like, what are 3 teams I'm building? So I've got 2 teams that I'm very confident in, and then I'm just trying to throw whatever I can for a third. But doing 19 million damage here, I should be able to do at least 10 million damage with my second team, and then my third team can do whatever they want, and we should be able to get to that top chest, which is the goal for whatever difficulty you're at, right? But you can see there is potential with this type of team. Now, obviously, a big part of this is buff extension. I'm getting it from Krisk, I'm getting it from Demytha. So keeping Krisk as my mischief head target is relatively easy to do, but even so, it's not 100%. And so, yeah, you can kind of see how this works. I thought it was a pretty good result. Obviously, Rogue Guard is not as great because he's weak affinity to half the heads out there. Husk is fantastic, but even with that, with Rogue Guard, you can see he's doing a lot of damage. I do have him in Relentless, so he gets a little bit more opportunities, but he is my king damage dealer out of this group, and Husk, I just wasn't quite able to get there. But let's take a look at the build so you guys have an understanding of exactly what I'm putting on these champions when I bring them into this. So we might as well start with the big boy. This is Krisk. I have not changed him really. This is my build for Hydra, right? 500 resist. That means it doesn't matter if I'm doing Nightmare or an easy. This is going to be enough resistance for me. 369 accuracy should be enough accuracy for all difficulties as well. I am trying to plan for that next stage. 185 speed. Now, normally with your Mischief head target, you want them going slower so the buffs stay on longer. With Krisk, because he extends buff, I would not have a problem with him actually going a little bit faster. I think that actually would probably benefit us a little bit more. But as it is, you know, halfway through this fight, he's going to have more buffs than everybody else because he's going slower than everybody. 4,500 defense, 77,000 HP. This is enough. You could see he wasn't dying. We didn't really ever have to worry about that. We were worrying more about our champions getting eaten. But Krisk is obviously amazing for this. Mastery wise, I did go offensive tree and I went support tree. So the debuffs last a little longer and the buffs last a little longer. That's what we're kind of aiming for there. Now, the interesting thing about that team is Krisk is the only legendary. We have a bunch of epics on this squad, including Demytha. You can see offense, defense, and mastery. I'm actually using the Demytha I use in my Myth Fu team, my clan boss team. So this is an offensive built Demytha. Definitely could build her a little bit more tanky, but frankly, this worked out great, right? 291 speed, going fast helps with the extensions, helps with the block damage. 100% crit rate is great, all that stuff. We have a little bit of attack, decent HP, decent defense, and just straight speed set on her. So that seemed to work pretty decently for me. In addition to her, we're going to bring in, obviously, we have Rector Draft, who is just a rec shop champion. I think she is so fantastic for this. Not only the perfect veil, but also the healing. The healing is such a major thing. And I'm taking her down the support tree here to lasting gifts, so the perfect veil stays on longer. I actually do go down a little bit on the accuracy side just so we can hopefully land that decreased accuracy she has on her A1. It's a nice skill. I do have her in reflex set. And this is really helpful, making sure that we keep perfect veil up as much as possible. I actually really like that set on her. Pretty solid HP, pretty solid defense, 242 speed. Going fast is very, very helpful. I definitely want her faster than the Head of Mischief so we get perfect veil up before the enemy goes. And 501 resistance, again, I'm looking forward towards the nightmare level of difficulty, even though I'm only on brutal. Trying to make sure that we resist all the debuffs that are coming on. 500 is a good target level of resistance. It may be a little bit more than is strictly necessary, but that's a really good place to aim for. We don't have any auras in this team, so we really had to get there with what we had available to us. I do want to show Husk, but first let's show Hugo here. I mean, Hugo is just a crazy, crazy good champion, right? Really good with the decreased defense, the block buffs. Now, one thing is Hugo is bad affinity for half these heads too, so the block buffs and the decreased defense doesn't always land. I had to do multiple runs in order to get this to work nicely. So bringing in somebody like Umbral Enchantress can be really good. She's a void champion. That block buffs is going to land every single time. That's really helpful, or I guess all but 3% of the time. But that's a really helpful thing. That's going to be a more consistent run if I did something like that. But Hugo brings a lot of other things to the table. So she won't shine in this affinity, but she's still really good. 238 speed, again, faster than the other heads. 3,000 defense, 50,000 HP, pretty solid for surviving. Like I said, nobody was really that close to dying, except Demytha, who's my clan boss champion, and even she survived, so not a big deal. 400 accuracy was really nice there as well, and she has a little bit of a cleanse, so if that head of decay does come out, we are able to cleanse away that heal reduction, which is kind of nice. Now let's go back to the big hitters. And we're going to start with Husk here. Now, Husk, I have in lethal gear. I'm running out of Savage and Relentless and all that other fun stuff. So I went with the best I had, and that was lethal gear. 196 speed, way lower than I would love to. I'd love to have Husk going about 220 speed, but honestly, I can't put that together and get the damage out of him. Not with keeping him with a decent amount of HP and defense. Good crit damage, not spectacular, but very good and solid crit rate right there on him. Mastery wise, we just went down offense and defensive tree, down to Helm Smasher. Honestly, I just haven't re-geared this. I probably should be taking War Master instead of Helm Smasher, because, you know, we're going to be getting pretty much the same amount of damage out of his big hit, and I can get some, you know, extra damage coming off his A1, A3. But you saw, I mean, his A3 and his A1 hit hard on this, so he's actually a really good damage dealer for these heads, which is nice. It's one of the good things about Hydra. Husk is a viable champion. And then I bring in my Royal Guard, also down the offensive tree and defensive tree. And again, to Helm Smasher, maybe not the best choice to do. I do have him in Relentless with a smidge of accuracy. Not a ton of it, but some of it. And we're going about 220 speed. This is a pretty solid build. I'm very happy with this build, honestly. I would love to get more accuracy in it. I like him landing his debuffs. You saw that happen, the decreased speed, the decreased defense. And obviously would love to pump his damage numbers up, his crit damage specifically, and you can never go too fast, right? But Relentless is great gear for this boss. I think it's probably the best one for your damage dealers. Relentless is great. Reflex is awesome too. So you have really two really good options as far as maximizing the damage. At some point here, I'll redo my Husk, I'll redo my Royal Guard so they are in the proper masteries and have the proper sets on. But that's the team that I brought in. So that was the team. I'm very happy with that result and that run. Honestly, this is a very difficult season that we're in. The Head of Wrath is something to really reckon with. I think once you get the hang of it, though, it's not as rough, maybe even as last season. There's definitely there's multiple ways to approach this one, I think, and be very successful. So I'm definitely going to be trying. I have another build here. Like I said, my second team is an HP burn focused team, which is very fun and a little bit more on meta. And then the third team is going to be a real interesting one on how I put that together. But, you know, the couple things like I would just say to remember, one of them is bringing that block buffs is really, really valuable. If you're facing that Head of Wrath, and I think this is important, when it explodes, that's a great time to attack it because you're not ticking up anything anymore. So if you can keep the reflect damage buff off of him, that's a really good time to attack that Head of Wrath. Just a little bit of tidbit there. But yeah, this has been pretty successful. Hopefully you guys found this informative and helpful. I know there's a Krisk in this, but that's not going to be in all my teams. I've only got one. You can make do. Similar team, you can make do by bringing in somebody like a Vergis and having someone else be your stun target, or even maybe like a Lord Champfort or something. There are definitely some other options there besides Krisk. He's just obviously tops for this, so I'm going to use him because I got him. So anyway, hopefully this was helpful for you guys. We're going to be doing some more Hydra stuff. I'm actually finding it pretty interesting, if definitely very frustrating. But we're going to be doing some more of that as we go along. Anyway, guys, thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, hit that notification bell, and until next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.